All right, today we're going to tackle something huge, the story of the Indian subcontinent. We're talking about a history that stretches back for millennia. From some of the very first cities in the world all the way to the largest democracy on Earth. We'll see empires rise and fall, we'll look at ideas that literally changed the world, and we'll watch the making of a modern superpower. It's a massive story for sure, but we're going to break it all down together.
So the big question is, how on earth do you even begin to tell a story that's millions of years long? Well, the only way to do it is to break it down, right? So we're going to take this immense history and journey through it in 4 distinct chapters or ages.
And here's our roadmap. We're going to kick things off with India's very first civilizations. Then we'll jump into the age of great empires, witness a really dramatic collision of worlds, and finally, we'll see how the modern nation was forged.
Okay, let's dive right in with Age 1, the first civilizations. For this, we have to go way, way back in time, back to the banks of the Indus River. Because it's right here that one of the world's oldest and, frankly, most remarkable urban societies first started to take shape. So our story really gets going with the Indus Valley Civilization. By about 2600 BCE, these people were building some of the world's first planned cities. It's amazing. And then, well, things get a little mysterious. This whole civilization eventually declined. And after that, a totally new era, the Vedic period, began to lay the philosophical and cultural groundwork for so much of what would come later.
What's just incredible is how ridiculously advanced these early cities were. I mean, think about it. Grid-like streets, multi-story houses made of baked bricks, and sanitation systems so sophisticated they rivaled ancient Rome's, but thousands of years earlier. They even pioneered the world's first ever wheeled transport, the bullock cart.
All right, let's move into our next age and see how things evolve. After centuries of smaller kingdoms squabbling, we get to the age of empires. This is where powerful, homegrown dynasties rise up and unify huge parts of the subcontinent for the very first time. And that brought incredible periods of stability and progress.
Now, 2 great empires really steal the show in this era. First up, you've got the Mauryan Empire, which brought almost the whole subcontinent together under legendary rulers like Ashoka. Then, centuries down the line, the Gupta Empire came along and kicked off what's often called India's Golden Age, a time of just unbelievable scientific and cultural achievement.
The story of Emperor Ashoka is one of the most incredible turnarounds in all of history. He was a brutal conqueror, but after one particularly bloody war, he was so horrified by what he'd done that he completely renounced violence and embraced Buddhism. And this is the amazing part, he had his new philosophy of peace carved onto pillars and rocks all across his empire for everyone to see. This really gives you a feel for the absolute explosion of knowledge during the Gupta era. This wasn't just about armies and power, it was an age of true intellectual giants. We're talking groundbreaking discoveries in astronomy and math, including, get this, the invention of the concept of zero. I mean, without that, there are no computers, no space travel. It changed everything.
Now we're heading into our 3rd age, and this one is all about arrival and interaction. Starting around the medieval period, new dynasties from Central Asia show up. And then, a little later, European traders start arriving by sea. This collision of worlds brought unbelievable wealth and a fusion of cultures, but it also brought conflict that would completely change the subcontinent's destiny.
So this timeline shows a massive power shift. First, you get the Delhi Sultanate, and then the legendary Mughal Empire, one of the richest in the world at the time. But look closely at that date, 1600. A small trading company is formed way over in England, and just over 150 years later, that little company would win a single battle that paved the way for it to dominate the entire subcontinent. It's wild.
The contrast here is just stark. On one side, you have the mighty Mughal Empire, one of the wealthiest on the planet. And on the other, you have a private company, a corporation, from a small island nation that was just supposed to be about trade. The idea that this tiny company would eventually bring down that colossal empire would have seemed absolutely insane. But that's exactly what happened.
10 million. Just let that number sink in. That's how many people are estimated to have died in the Great Bengal Famine of 1770. And yet, a drought was part of the problem, but many historians argue it was the policies of the East India Company, which put profits way ahead of people's lives that turned a horrible crisis into an unimaginable catastrophe.
And that brings us to our final and most dramatic age, the struggle for freedom. This is the story of colonial rule at its peak.
the massive popular movements that rose up to challenge it, and the complicated, triumphant, and often very painful birth of modern India.
Okay, so in 1857, a huge rebellion against the East India Company's rule just swept across India. In the end, the British government crushed the rebellion, kicked out the company, and took direct control. This new era of direct rule by the British Crown became known as the British Raj.
The road from the Raj to a republic was incredibly long and difficult. It really started with that first rebellion. Then it moved to more organized political groups like the Indian National Congress, and then it was totally supercharged by mass movements of civil disobedience. All of this ultimately led to independence in 1947, and finally, the declaration of a republic in 1950.
The return of Mahatma Gandhi in 1915 was an absolute game-changer. He introduced this idea of satyagraha, or nonviolent resistance to the world, and through iconic moments like the Salt March, a brilliantly simple act of defiance against a British tax, and the massive Quit India movement, he mobilized millions and completely captured the world's attention.
Hundreds of thousands. That's the estimated number of people who were killed in the horrific violence that just erupted after the British partitioned the subcontinent into two countries, India and Pakistan. It triggered one of the largest and deadliest migrations in all of human history, and it left a legacy of trauma that, honestly, endures to this day.
So from the world's first planned cities to the world's largest democracy, the story of India is one of just constant reinvention. It's a story that is very much still being written, and it leaves all of us with the big question, what on earth will the next chapter hold?